Hey, it's Tuesday evening. Welcome along. Time to get going. Ooh, welcome. For those who may not know, I'm Richard Moyes, Children's Youth, oh dear, Children's Youth and Families Pastor for Southside Uniting Church. Southside meets on land that, well, the traditional custodians were the Yagara and the Turrbal people. So we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We pray for conciliation between us and them. So welcome along. We've been spending the last 3 weeks? I think we're 3. Yes. Last 3 weeks. Looking at some material put together, particularly by Andrew Root, and last week we looked a bit at Trip Fuller. So they're looking at ministry in the secular age and some of the challenges that we have. We've looked at some stuff from Charles Taylor, whose work, A Secular Age, sort of massive 700-odd page book, explores why it is that we got from a place where in the 1500s it was, almost impossible not to believe in God to a place where it seems strange and really weird why you would believe in God. And so we've explored sort of that movement between that secular zero world of, enchantment and demons and angels and a porous self through to secular 3, and that sense of the immanent frame and that we're very much focused on world life around us. Last time we looked a bit at dilemmas and the pushing of those, of the forces that cause cross-pressure and that cause us to think. And so we're going to explore today some things about acceleration that comes out of the work of Rosa, who was apparently a German philosopher. And a male, not the nice female Rosa that I was thinking of. I was thinking of Rosa Parks from who sat on the bus. But no, Rosa is a male German philosopher. But before we do that, each week we have a movie quote. And if you can get the movie quote, be the first person to put the movie quote in the comment box, you can win a prize. So here's an old one. Let's see if anyone can get this. We'll see your strange movie watching, shall we say. So ready? It goes like this. You can't fight in here. This is the war room. So what movie does that come from? You can't fight in here. This is the war room. Do you know what movie that comes from? Question. Good question. I'll leave you to ponder that. Can't find him here. This is the war room. I don't know how they say. I haven't actually seen the movie, so I don't know how they say it, but that's the quote. So if you know what it is, pop it in the comment box. You can win a prize. So in there, Andy Root's talk through Rosa's ideas, sort of looking at maybe our why question. So our why question we've been exploring has been why this changed with Charles Taylor. Why is it difficult now to be a pastor, be someone working in ministry? Now moves to why could change hurt your church? And that recognition that we all feel that there's need for change. And particularly COVID has strengthened that, this need for some sort of change in the church, but we're not sure what it is. It's one of the struggles of youth ministry for a couple of decades now. It's like we need to change. We need to be doing something different. We need, intergenerational stuff like that. But what does that look like? No one's landed on it yet. And so we're in this time of change. Again, talked before about Phyllis Tickle and her idea that every 500 years there's a major shift. And we're in that shift period, but what we're going to land on, we still haven't worked out what that looks like. So it's that sense of, we know there needs to be some change. What does it look like? Not sure. And Andy Root, and presumably Rosa, probably Andy Root, suggests that we think of the problem is that the church is in decline. So our problem, the church is in decline, we've got to build it back up. That's our problem, let's fix that. Which has often got us into the secular II discussion, where secular II is very much people are leaving the church. How do we do something spectacular so they come back? And we try and solve that problem, whereas many people are off in secular III. So Rosa suggests maybe the problem more is the Zeitkrankheit. Zeitkrankheit. Sehr viel. I can speak the German. This is the Zeitkrankheit, which is time sickness. That our problem is, our time is changing, and as we'll look at, maternity has meant a speeding up of things. We're going to look at 3 accelerations, which is why I called it acceleration. Life seems to be moving faster, and so it's actually, this is the problem, as opposed to, well, people are leaving the church. No, we don't have this time stuff. So how have we seen acceleration? The first one, as Andy Root says, will not surprise you whatsoever. Technological acceleration. And so we just see technology. It just continues to expand and to speed up. And the change of technology continues to speed up. And some say that the church needs to change because of tech. Oh, there's all this new stuff, so we've got to get in there and do it. We've got to use all this new technology and stuff. If we're not doing that, then, hey, what's happening? Rosa says that technological acceleration is the intentional speeding up of the goal-directed process of transport, communication, and production. So this technological acceleration is about we speed up production, we speed up transport, we speed up communication. And if we think about those things, they keep speeding up. As they were doing this, I'm a Formula One fan, have been since the early 90s. Back in high school, we used to have a friend of Dad's who would tape them and then lend me the videotape of the Formula Ones. And then when I got into uni and college and stuff, I'd actually sit up till all hours to watch, or wake up early in the morning to watch races. Then I got older and went, I'll just record it. And now we only get snippets on Channel 10, pay TV. Anyway, not what I'm meant to be talking about. But that reminded me, in Formula One, they keep bringing these rules to slow down the cars so that it's safe, and they keep doing new inventions and new add-ons that get the cars faster. And so that sense of, when we talk about transport speeding up, I can see that in this thing that I love. And so these things keep speeding up. It's not just cool gadgets, but we start to have an unease about this acceleration. It's like, can we go any faster? We've reached the limit. And he talks about, doctors say, maybe we're just going to get so fast that we're just going to melt our brains. Our brains cannot cope with this speed. And this has been something that has been around for a long time. So when the train first came in, there was this sense of, some doctors were saying, humans should not ride on a train because we're not sure that the human brain can cope with going faster than 25 miles an hour. Once turning to mush, 25 miles an hour, about what a horse can do. We know the brain can cope with that, but going faster than that, who knows what's going to happen. So there's always been this fear of, going faster and going faster as far as transportation goes. And how much can we cope with going faster? It's also that sense of going faster has meant change. So in 1888, there was a big change and pushing for time zones and standardizations of times. So Andy Root uses the example of prior to that, Minnesota where he is might be, 7:15, 100k, 200k's away might be, 7:45. And it didn't matter that there was that time difference because it took you so long to get there. It didn't matter if you were, out by half an hour. And this was not, like, say, Victoria and South Australia where there's a deliberate. This is probably within the same state, relatively close. Be like going up to top of the Sunshine Coast or something, and they're 20 minutes out or whatever. It didn't matter. But you start to bring things in like the train, you travel quicker. Hang on, you can't have these massive changes. If we leave here and then suddenly they're half an hour out, then we're getting there at the same time as we're leaving here. That doesn't make sense. We can't do a timetable like that, things like that. And so it meant a change in the way people think. And they said all this speeding up makes the assumption that availability is very important. It's all about what's available, what are the new things, what are the things that are going to make our lives better and speedier, what is available. And so when we think like that, then the tech advances become the church should become more available. How do we become more available? How do we have more things where people can connect in? How do we have online that is available to people? How do we have this over here that's available? How do we have groups? And if you think about that's a lot of church discussions about how do we have a group that makes it available for the young families or for older people or for whatever. This idea of availability. And that can overwhelm us. So Andy Root talks about they moved from Spotify to Apple Music. And because it had a whole heap of all these other add-ons, Apple Fit or something, and magazines and stuff, and it was almost this sense of, he says when he first got it, it's like he was just overwhelmed. It was like, well, how do I use all this stuff? And they'd sort of have these meetings like, is anyone using Apple Fit? Because Apple Fit's there, we've got to use it, and if we're not using this thing that's available to us, we're not making the most out of this, and we're not doing the right thing to, and we can get caught up in that. Oh, there's these new ideas out there. We've got to grab onto them. We've got to use them because they're out there. If we're not using, the latest online software, we're going to fall behind. And so we get caught up in that advancement and that speeding up. And that, that wears us all out. How do we go faster and faster and faster? How do we produce more? How do we communicate more? And of course, yes, the next bit. So I keep getting ideas of, I mustn't have written that down, then realise it's the next bit, and I'm going to interrupt what I'm saying, so I'm stopping. So, 1, technological acceleration. No surprise there. 2, an acceleration of social life. So Taylor talks about human actions come out of morals. So we do this. And the pandemic has upended our acceleration. So production has been upended, but communication has gone crazy. So, everyone's suddenly at home streaming all these shows. Zoom has gone off the radar. Suddenly idiots are talking online on Tuesday nights, and you have to sit there and watch that. I was talking to Rachel in the office maybe Thursday. It's that sense of, two things this week. The pandemic has changed. So I was preparing for Jaffa, that's what it was. And I sort of start with, what did you do in the holidays? So picture of a theme park, picture of the beach, picture of Toowoomba Flower Festival, and I thought, picture of staying at home. So staying at home. On Google, and you get a whole heap of pictures of stay at home orders and stuff like that. It's like, whereas, 18 months ago, stay at home, people like sitting on the lounge, stuff like that. Our language has changed. Alongside of that thing I was talking with Rachel about, that's right. So last week at Jaffa, we were talking about, what did we do at church on Sunday? Oh dear. I was paying attention on it, the manna. God providing manna. So you Google in, not Google in, but into YouTube, kids, Exodus 16, and there's a whole heap of options. And most of them have made in the last 18 months by people like me who do kids ministry for church, and it's fairly B, C grade type stuff. I don't want to use that. I don't want to use it. Where's the good quality stuff? And so we've jumped into, hey, let's put stuff online and yeah, we're just producing stuff and we're producing more and more and more. And is that helpful? Who knows? That's the question. But that's changed the social life. All this new stuff online. And internet usage has spiked during the pandemic. So while production and transport got halted, communication continued to speed up. And that has all led to social unrest. And makes us think about things of equality, and issues like that have started to come up. I'm thinking about those social issues. He then talked about decay rates. So one of the challenges that we see is the decay rate. So the decay rate is defined as the time it takes something to be no longer of the present. So how long it's taken to decay to, well, that was of then. And the example that Rosa uses, and which is a good example, is the decay rate of the typewriter compared with the decay rate of the computer. And so computers, 3 years, it's about how long you have a computer, and then you get your new one. It decays fairly quickly. Whereas a typewriter, much longer. You can go and see the house where Hemingway wrote and see the typewriter Hemingway wrote on. But you're not going to go to a modern day writer. He used the example of Stephen King. All his computers, he doesn't, oh, that was the computer I wrote, carry on. And that was the computer they're gone. So the decay rate is much quicker. These things are important. And it's not just things, but it's also norms, ways of talking. They decay as well. And so people really resent when the things they say or things that are important to them have decayed and are no longer of the present. As older people, you're used to say that, and the young people look at it and go, it's an old way of saying something, isn't it? Yeah, that's gone now. But you try and pick up what young people are saying, and the decay rate is so quick that I've worked out when the lingo's changed. And we see that cultural example Andy Root used was The Office. That there was an interview, I think recently, with Steve Carell of the American Office. And he was asked, would you go back and do a reboot of The Office? And he said no. Because the jokes are no longer appropriate. He then used a stand-up comedian sort of talking about The Office and the sense of the guy there who's trying to sort of hit on the secretary, which I presume is the same as the British Office. And in that sense of for several years he's trying to do this, and the secretary's sort of engaged, and it's like, if this was modern day, he'd be hit with a sexual harassment lawsuit. That will be what would happen. But 10 years ago, that was it. And the comedian was talking about he'd been on Parks and Rec, and it's like some of this. He said one of the storylines he did was, he gave a present to a girl and it had a natty cam in it, and in a sense, when he did it back then, it was like, oh yes, I just want to see her house. But now it'd be like, no, I would not do that. That would be completely inappropriate storyline to do. And so that decay rate, things have changed. Some shows you sit there, older shows, and you go, oh, did they say that? You couldn't say that now. Life is changing, and we're having to keep up. You were saying young people sometimes use The Office. We watch that for nostalgia. It's a bit like when young people say, oh, I'm playing an old game, and you think, oh, Pac-Man or something. No, from 2010 or something. You go, that's not old. That's new. It's not old. What are you talking about? But yes, get out the PlayStation or you got for Ollie. That's might be old. That's old. I love when I say to kids, I've got a PlayStation. Oh, your PlayStation 4? No, PlayStation. A PlayStation 4? No, PlayStation. Before we had 2, 3, and 4, there was PlayStation. But anyway, and apparently Billie Eilish, when she's depressed, will just put The Office on sort of loop for the nostalgia thing. It's of its time, it's gone. It's a thing of the past. Like we might watch the Brady Bunch or something. And so all this change and speed up in social life has led to this feeling of the need for accessibility. So how are we accessible in all ways? And some want to be at the center of social norms. So how are we playing this part? How are we accessible to everyone? Sort of thing. That's a challenge. Yeah, I'll keep going with my notes so I don't jump ahead. So acceleration of technology, acceleration of social life. See, I didn't look. It came to my mind. Acceleration of the pace of life. You know, we know it. We all feel it. Oh, life is just getting faster and faster. And you could think that, and the idea is technology was meant to slow down the pace of life. You know, get all this technology that does the stuff for us so we can just relax. Isn't that great? Aren't we enjoying it? Oh, well. So that sense of, you know, social change should free us up to be our authentic selves. You know, we let loose those things we had to be. We can now just be yourself. Isn't that lovely? Not live a certain way, but rather the pace just keeps on accelerating. So think of emails, you know. Before the email, you wrote letters. So think about, say, in your business day, you might get 10 letters. And so you might spend 2 hours writing the letters or dictating the letters that someone else would type up for you. And then you'd have to find the address and post and send it off and all those sorts of things. So you might get 10 letters done in a 2-hour period. Now, nowadays we get emails. So 10 emails, a lot less time. So you're looking at 45 minutes, maybe an hour to get those 10 emails done. So you've got a whole extra hour. You've got an hour where you can, you know, spend time with the family. You can just kick back and relax, watch TV. You've got an extra hour. Isn't this technology wonderful? But of course we know it doesn't work like that. Because now we just have a whole heap more emails. And so instead of 10 letters in the day, you know, you might get 30, 40 emails. I forget how many Rachel had when she got back into the office last week. She sat down and went, So while the 10 emails might take us a lot less, with some might take us an hour, 10 letters might take us 2 hours, or we've suddenly got 30 emails, so that's going to take us 3 hours, but we've only got the 2 hours to do it in. There's that sense of, if you block out life into units of time, well, the unit of time for that would have been the letter writing suddenly has more in it than the time allows. And so instead of having less to do, we've suddenly got more to do. And so we see this speeding up. And so the acceleration of the pace of life leads us to think about attainability. And so it means you need to keep going. How do we keep it attainable? How do we keep going? So Rosa says something deep to us. When we construct our church to accelerate, it has a spiritual effect on us, and it leads to alienation. So it's not just, hey, we can accelerate and that's fine. It actually affects us spiritually. Alienation leaves us alienated from others and ourselves. An example he used comes from The Onion. The Onion is a satirical news website. My favourite thing or fact from The Onion was they wrote an article about J.K. Rowling's, about her being a witch, and that was why she was writing Harry Potter, which some lovely Christian read and went, oh, J.K. Rowling's is a witch. And this spread through the church like wildfire. And no one bothered to go, but hang on, The Onion is satirical. And so we should not take it seriously. But they had an article, and the article was called "Man on Cusp of Having Fun Suddenly Remembers Every Single One of His Responsibilities." And so this man is at this barbecue. He's about to have fun. He's about to enjoy himself, and suddenly all these things pop into his head. So part of the article, the last part of the article says, according to sources, Platt tried to put his responsibility-laden thoughts out of his mind and loosen up by opening another beer but suddenly remembered a magazine subscription that needed to be renewed by Friday, a medical bill he thought might now be overdue, and the fact that he needed to do laundry by tonight, or he would run out of clean socks and underwear. "Who made they squawk?" said the man, who almost let himself take pleasure in the beautiful evening with his closest friends before he let his brain become consumed with thoughts about how he needed to move on from his current job, but is putting off work necessary to make the transition. It's delicious. It's delicious, all these thoughts going through the back of his head. While the barbecue's host chatted with Platt about how excited he was to see the upcoming Superman movie, sources confirmed that all Platt could think about was the fact that his recently married sister was coming to town next weekend and was supposed to stay with him, which reminded him that he needed to clean his apartment, which reminded him that he needed to buy extra bedding for his sister to sleep on, which reminded him that he had to make an after-work trip to Bed Bath & Beyond, which reminded him he would be tired after work and wouldn't want to go to Bed Bath & Beyond, which reminded him that he also needed to go to the grocery store because his sister would think he's irresponsible if she saw his empty refrigerator, which reminded him that he and his sister aren't really as close as he'd like, which reminded him that his parents already had a house and 2 cars by the time they were his age, which reminded him that he'd been with his girlfriend over 5 years and that while everything was going fairly well, he felt overwhelmed by the prospect of marriage and mounting pressure to propose. "Yeah, Man of Steel looks good," said a smiling Platt, who was only thinking about how he graduated from college over 10 years ago and still owed $86,000 in student loans. "Can't wait to see it." Accounts confirmed the man nearly convinced himself that all his responsibilities would be taken care of in due time and that he should just relax when a friend mentioned a recent road trip he had taken with his wife, which prompted Platt to mull over the fact that he still needed to renegotiate the lease terms of his 2010 Jetta, a task he was delaying on until he had a fender bender repaired. In addition, Platt began thinking about the number of opened envelopes on his kitchen table, some of the contents of which he remembered were actually important and should be rechecked before he throws them away. "Hey, I have to get going," said the man, who could barely recall anything that anyone at the gathering had said the entire evening. "Just have a couple of things I need to get done tonight." "This was great, though," he added. So this acceleration leaves us divorced from the world, from enjoying and connecting in with people. So tries to relax but just can't. All these thoughts are going, "I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do that." And they're going, how many times do we do that? That is our life. Let's keep the rest for next week. There's a thing. So that's the 3 major changes, and we'll unpack what that means next week. But we see an acceleration in technology, we see an acceleration in social life, and we see an acceleration in speed of life, or pace of life. And some people might think we see an acceleration in the speed which Richard talks when he gets excited. Sorry. Thanks for joining us. For those that will watch at a later time, thanks for joining us then, whenever that is. Again, hopefully this stuff is helpful. So we've got this stuff we'll talk through next week, and there's another lecture that I haven't watched yet about all of this, and then we'll see where we go. Again, if you've got questions, comments, pop them in the box. We can explore what you want to talk about. Until then, can't fight in here. This is a war room. Where did it come from? Have a good week. Bye, everyone.